Will make your dreams happen. All right.
All right, sweet. Okay, so I wanted to start off with this brood parasitism topic since it seems to be gaining
Mm,
some traction. There was a
yes.
new post on Dog Free recently with another person basically coming to the conclusion that dogs are a parasitic species on humanity. And this is a topic that I find really fascinating. And I recorded a call with Animal and Control on this topic. And yeah, it's just something I wanted to kind of revisit and maybe flush out a bit more and also get your take on it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I think I have that article you referenced right here. Is it Are Dogs a Parasite of People? It's from a day ago.
Yes, yeah, that's the new one I saw.
Yeah. Do you want me to read it? It's actually kind of long. I
It is
wouldn't
kind of
want
long because I
to take up.
considered reading the whole thing too, which I don't think we need to do because, yeah, it is quite long. But maybe some interesting excerpts from it. Uh, like here, consider the sheer volume of all the dogs in the world compared to other mammals and life forms. While most other large mammals have been gradually disappearing from this planet, dog numbers are massive. I think that's really interesting. Like one of my favorite animals ever since I was a little kid is the elephant. I just love them. I think
Mm,
they're cute
mine
and
too.
amazing. I love that they have kind of like a maternal based structure, like a matriarchy. I find matriarchal societies really interesting, like bees and stuff. And I
Mm.
think it's really sad that they're so endangered. And meanwhile, this terrible, useless creature like the dog is basically worshipped. So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, elephants, of course, are very intelligent as well, and high degree of empathy and social order. I mean, if you watch them, how they behave with one another, their family units. I forget what they're exactly called, but yeah, one of my favorite animals as well. And my immediate thought as you were saying that was no justice in this reality, whatever it is.
Right.
There is no justice. I've been looking at statistics recently, I might bring this up. Matter of fact, I better open up my little thought file. I make little thought files. I'm like
Nice.
when I'm
I need
thinking
to do
about
that
things,
more.
we're gonna hit these points, right? We're gonna hit all these talking points. But yeah, I've been thinking about the pet industry recently because the dog issue is I think it's like a rich tapestry. It's multifaceted. It's like a multi-headed. I think like Cerberus from mythology, right? The Greek mythology. It's a multi-headed dog that a terrible multi-headed dog that has many. There's not one singular explanation to what's going on here, and there's a lot of different facets. So one thing that I've been looking at is how the pet industry itself, did you know, is a $250 billion industry. That's billion with a Carl Sagan B. It's huge money. Pet food, pet grooming, pet toys, pet gifts, pet sitting, pet everything, right? There's a huge amount of profit, for corporate types that are looking at things in terms of, how can we make a bunch of money off of a trend? And in regards to the elephant, I don't know if there's much profitability in the elephant. So that's going to explain part of that disparate injustice. Why there's a lot more dogs, and part of those pet industry statistics. I'm looking at some. Can I just hit some of these points I was coming
Absolutely.
up
Yeah,
on
for
the
sure.
pet industry?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's $250 global market. This is
250
the kind of stuff.
billion with a
250.
B.
Did I say million? 250 billion global market for pet industry, and this is the kind of stuff that, of course, corporate bean counting, they're just concerned with statistics and trends and all that sort of things for profitability. That they drool over this type of stuff, like $250 billion industry annually. In the USA, people spent 89 billion on their pets in 2023. That's one country, 89 billion. I'd like to compare that with some other numbers as far as national costs go? What else have we exceeded? I've been thinking about things, for example, like, oh, I don't know, homelessness, orphans. How much are people spending on things? But we spent 90 billion on pets. In 2023, there's a 16% increase in pet food sales, complete waste of resources as far as I'm concerned. And that involves, of course, the slaughter of nobler animals, which is a shame. Millennials lead the pack in terms of pet ownership by generation, with 33% of people born between 1981 and 1996 being, according to this article, they use it, pet parents.
Oh my god.
Don't you love that?
Well, that fits
Don't
into
you
the
love
brood
that?
parasite. I mean, that fits into the brood parasite concept perfectly. They are being referred to as children, essentially.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I've got a lot to say about that too. I'll continue with some stats here.
Yes.
Some mind-blowing stats. The pet sitting market size was 1.94 billion in 2021, is expected to grow. I love the way this is written. This is all, it's so optimistic about profitability and market growth.
Big line must go up always.
I just imagine some some soulless. They don't care about social ramifications or anything. Just can we make money? How can we make money doing this? All right,
Very
2.2
short
million
term.
dogs. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say it's a short-term view. Just this quarter, we have
Right.
to do better than last quarter. Who cares about 20 years down the line?
Screw the future.
Right.
Right. 2.2 million dogs and 2.6 million cats were adopted from shelters in 2023. I wonder why more cats are being successfully adopted. Could it be the type of dog that we see in shelters?
Right. Yeah.
Shelters are full of course, the bully breeds
Yep.
that nobody wants.
There's
Okay,
way too many of them.
go ahead.
Yes, continue. I love statistics, so I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, I'm gonna knock these out. I'm about halfway.
Yeah.
While pet ownership accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic, investment banking companies predict millennials and Generation Z will sustain growth up till 14% by 2030. So I heard that it's not in this article, but I read in another article that like the number is going to be something like 400 billion by 2030. The projected global pet market. Global natural pet food market is expected to grow by 4.6% from 2023. So yeah, so natural pet food. Now we got to have like natural and organic, right, for our dogs too. Over the past 5 years, raw dog food has seen a 147% increase in purchasing patterns. I guess it's another trend. Let's feed our worthless mutts premium raw food that, I mean, quite frankly, I'm salivating for.
Right.
Now it's like, yeah, let's give them like nice steaks and chops and all that stuff. Okay, roughly 40% of pet owners buy their pet food and treats online. Some of these stats, yeah, they're not too relevant. People spend between $70 and $80 on one dog grooming session. What is that? Like a dog haircut?
Right.
I
That
don't
is
even know.
wild.
$80 for get your dog's haircut. 2022, it was reported that 48% of the people who give their pets CBD oil offer it as edible treats. Okay, that's they give their dog CBD oil.
Oh my dog.
Pet supplement. Oh my dog. Pet supplement sales reached 2.49 billion. Pet supplements. Wait, let me back up. Pet supplements. Now we're talking about pet supplement sales reached 2.49 billion in 2023. They're giving their pets vitamins.
Well,
These
they're all
pets are
food
being
is
taken care of
food.
better than me. Wait.
Yeah. Better than the children's like cafeteria food at public schools. You know what I mean? Are they
Oh,
putting thought
exactly.
into like high nutrient dense, raw, organic? No, they get the worst, like mass produced, you know, just terrible food at the schools.
Have you heard the thing, a bit of a segue, but have you heard the thing about how, we know that school lunches are bad news. They still have to abide by certain federal guidelines. They need to offer a certain number of servings of vegetables and fruits and whatever. And in order to kind of get around that, they're recategorizing certain foods. So potatoes, I guess, are counted as a vegetable, like a potato vegetable serving, and like tomato sauce is counted as a vegetable serving. however they work it out, basically they say that like a slice of pizza now, according to the guidelines, they give a kid a slice of pizza. And I'm talking like the cafeteria pizza, like the square.
Yeah,
It's like a giant square thing. You know what I'm talking about,
exactly. Oh yeah,
right?
because I grew up eating that stuff.
So yeah, apparently that gives you like apparently that gives a growing child all their daily allowances of vegetables and fruits and everything, because like the vegetables and the tomato sauce and it's like the grain and the bread. It's considered somehow they shift all the requirements around, and it's all twisted and warped, but that's what it is. And in the meanwhile, pet parents are spending, they're buying their dogs vitamins, they're getting them CBD oil. I mean, a kid could only dream, right?
Right.
And if there's time, maybe near the end, when I hit some of the points on my little thought list here, I do want to touch, because I'm thinking a lot about orphans and children in general, and compared to dogs, and exactly what we're talking about. Which one is getting taken care of better in our society? I have some points about that.
Oh yeah, for
Okay,
sure. We
let me
can
close it out. There's like five more. There's like five more here, and then I'll give up the mic. Let's see. 2025 pet grooming product industry is projected to grow to 14.5 billion. Out of the 3.1 million insured pets in the United States, 83% of them are dogs, and 17% are cats. During the 2022 to 2025 pet accessories market is expected to grow by 9.2 billion. More than 50% of pet owners are willing to pay more for eco-friendly pet care products. Eco-friendly, really? I mean, if you
what?
care about that, your dog, a single dog, leaves a larger carbon footprint than driving an SUV. That's been determined already. So that's a silly,
Seems
that's
very
just silly. The
contradictory.
pet tech, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance to be a dog lover. I mean, there's just you just can't
Absolutely.
you can't have any kind of consistency in thought. The tech market is set to grow at 22% compound annual growth rate. I don't know what any of that means. I don't know. I don't know anything about money, but apparently pet tech is a thing.
Yeah, I
What
don't
is
even know
even
what that
pet tech?
is. What does that mean? Pet tech? Like device. Well, I've seen like these weird feeders and things that have like a camera because people can't
Oh,
even go to work and not want to look at their dog all day, like slopping up,
oh my
food
God.
and water. Have you seen, what I'm talking
So
about? They have like
so
cameras.
it'd be like a Ring doorbell on their dog
Yes.
bowl. Like they go to eat and
Yes.
it turns on.
Yeah, so they can go to
Gosh.
work
We're
and earn the money that they use to then just funnel into their crap pound.
All right, last point. Americans spent 490 million on Halloween costumes for their pets.
You can't see me, but I'm rolling my eyes are rolling around in my head right now.
I know I had to pause on that one because they even have pictures like they got some crappy little fur ball here with a little witch's hat, and I'm like, what is going on here?
You
This is
know,
apparently a thing. People spend millions on Halloween costumes for their pets. Yes. Go ahead, please. I'm done.
oh, no, I
I'm
love
so
the
done.
stats. I think it would be a great show to do just an entire call on various statistics and looking into that a little more deeply. Yeah, I've pulled up these dog costumes and it's honestly repulsive, but and again, this just to me really speaks to the brood parasitism element of what has happened. And like you said, it's a multifaceted, not just one thing can explain. Oh, look at this one. This is like a Cerberus or whatever. A horrifying sight. That is a Halloween
Wow.
costume for sure. That's something right
That's
out of a
yeah.
nightmare.
That's
But
that's the hellhound right there. Yeah.
right. So this is something that you would expect parents doing with their children and creating. I loved Halloween as a kid. I had some fun costumes growing up. My mom and I
Hmm.
homemade our costumes a lot, and it was just a great time. And now, imagine taking your toddler trick or treating and you come up on something like this, a pit bull wearing a sheet, you know what I
Right.
mean? The the idea, so, these dogs obviously don't at all understand any of this. They don't know it's Halloween. They don't understand that they're wearing a costume. This is 1000% for these pet parents, I guess, to simulate having a child and doing these sorts of things.
Mm.
I just, it kind of boggles the mind the more you think about it. Oh, look, there's a kid in a dog
Oh,
costume, dressed as a dog.
oh, of course, right. Yeah. So what is that? Get that one out of here. Like, what is that?
Right. Just so bizarre. I just thinking
It's
of
all
the amount.
projection.
It is. It's literally, and especially like you were talking about millennials and Gen Z. We hear a lot about the dink couples, like the dual income, no kids. But I would like
Hmm.
to see what percentage of those couples like have pets instead. You know what I mean? Like how much of their dual income is actually going to things like dog Halloween costumes? Because a common claim our society makes today to try to discourage people from having children is how incredibly expensive it is. And it's just unaffordable at this point to have kids, and you're better off never having children because of all the money you'll lose. And then you're buying your dog like a costume to dress like a cow. I mean, how does that make sense? Right?
Right. Right. And a dog, in essence, has always been a luxury item. It's not something that you don't need it. You know, it's not necessary. It doesn't serve a necessary function, and it's always been an indicator of status and excess wealth. Now you're just going to funnel it into, yeah, this worthless thing.
Right. And we touched on this on our last call, but the theory of the leisure class, because
All right.
dogs are called out in this uh, work as being kind of a sign of conspicuous consumption. Like even here, you see a poodle being walked on the cover of this book, because that type of conspicuous consumption is meant to display like this aspirational lifestyle. You know, you're supposed to aspire to having, I guess, the disposable income to buy your dog like a costume or whatever else people are doing with their dogs nowadays. Buying a
Mhm.
stroller. How are you saving money not having kids if you're buying a stroller to like push your dog around in and stuff like that? It's just very bizarre. It also kind of reminds me of I saw in the store these Barbie dolls, and literally some of them have like little plastic poo that you're.
Ugh,
I think here it is. Yeah, Pooper Scooper
right.
Barbie. I mean, is this what you're wanting? Is it eating the poo in this picture? I mean, that would track, but
I remember when Barbie used to have, there was like an astronaut Barbie and like like
right.
President. I don't know, but she used to aspire to greater things.
Yes.
Now now you get to simulate the joys of scooping poop.
I
You
mean,
know,
look at
I was kind of blanking out a little bit ago. I was trying to recall. You mentioned dinks,
yes.
and I came across. I had to look this up. That's why I was just looking for it. There's a new term. They're called dink wads.
Oh, even
That's
better.
dual income, no kids with. Oh wait, I just had it. Hold on. It's with dogs. Yeah, dinkwads. Double income, no kids, and a dog. Dinkwad. That's their new term. I didn't make that up.
It sounds like something the dog-free people would make up. Like if I was called a dinkwad, I would feel quite offended. But I guess I guess they're not
Yeah.
offended at all.
No, they embraced it. No, I see it. There's an article right here, and it's like they're very proud looking, proud looking millennial couple with their big soy smiles and the
So
dog
smart.
sitting right between them. Yeah. Yeah, okay, what's this? You got Barbie with oh, she's got the dog stroller. Okay, great. Very
Right.
good. Yeah, you got to prepare them for that.
Exactly. See, I'm sure you can buy a Barbie with a baby or like a babysitter Barbie, but there are so actually many more versions. See, here you have doggy daycare Barbie,
Wow.
and here she
This is
is,
actually this is mind blowing, really.
right?
This Barbie, because Barbie has always been associated with sort of, dare I say, grooming young females to behave in certain ways, right?
Right.
Now let's train them to have a cutesy dog. She got the dog carrier.
I mean, look how
Oh,
many
look at this.
doggy Barbie wellness self care spa day with puppy. The last thing
Right.
I would want to do in my self care spa day is deal with a dog. That sounds terrible,
Yeah.
but I mean, look how many. I mean,
And
I'm just all I googled was
oh,
like
look,
we even have
yeah, dog,
multi-ethnic Barbie dog moms, and like I could just keep going and going. It seems to be, what is this? Beauty and the puppies. Barbie doll's dog has two adorable puppies.
wow.
Wonderful. Dog groomer or a dog breeder backyard breeder Barbie.
Backyard Barbie.
Is there dog
I like
fighter
that.
Barbie? No. But yeah, I mean, it
Does
just
that
goes
come?
on
Now
and on.
that one should come with infants for for mauling purposes.
Exactly,
That one should
yeah.
come with.
The Barbie dolls that come with babies are just there as sacrificial victims to the dog cult.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you
I
got to
mean,
teach them young. This is what it's all about.
that's what exactly the point, yeah, I'm trying to make. Is this is indoctrination, right? I mean, this is like the aspirational lifestyle. This is what you should aspire to be as a girl. You want to grow up and you know get rid of any possibility for a future potential mate because you're busy with your Barbie dog strollers. And I mean, yeah, I could just, this is a whole rabbit hole. It looks like there's just an endless supply of dog care Barbie aspirational. What is this, fake service dog Barbie?
Right. Yeah. Teach them those magic words early on. Right.
Yeah, that is a little side story, but not long ago I went to the grocery store and there was a couple there and the woman was heavily pregnant. Like
Mhm.
she looked at least 8 months or so pregnant, and her husband was carrying their large dog across the parking lot to the entrance of the store. And then as soon as they got, because the dog paws might get burned on the hot the hot
Oh
parking
yeah.
lot, so they carried
I,
their service dog into the store. I mean, I understand that there are invisible disabilities, but if you're carrying the service dog into the store, like if the husband is physically carrying a dog inside, like is he not fully equipped to be his, you know, spouse's, I guess, helper more so than just some dog? Anyways, uh,
Precisely. Well, no, you nailed it. Actually, that is part of the criteria when you look at it. What is a service dog? A service dog, by definition, it's performing a job. So the idea is that we're going to allow you to come and bring it into the store, which we normally wouldn't allow a dirty dog into the store by health code. We're
right,
going to allow it because you need that dog in order to function. That's supposed to be the deal, and it's all in the honor system. It's a very flawed, abusable system. So when you see somebody carrying a dog that is, quote, a service dog, it's not a service dog. Simple. I had this the other day with somebody. She was carrying a dog around in the store like she was holding it like a baby, cradling it in her arms and carrying it around like a baby. It didn't even have a leash on, so there was like no intention ever of it walking on its own. She
right.
was carrying it like a baby, and I called her out on it, and she tried to give me this. I cut her off. She's tried to give me the service dog. I'm like, that's not a service dog. You don't carry service dogs like a baby, right? Because it's not doing you any service right now. It's not doing a job. Okay, what do we have here? That kind of gives me the romantic lover vibes.
I
I
wasn't
don't know
gonna
if we want to
say
give.
it, but yeah.
I don't know
So
if we want to get into that in these streams, but the whole idea that And not only do people supplant them as their children, they also supplant them as their significant others.
Right.
Mm.
Perhaps a topic for another day. But
Yeah, yeah,
so
but
they
yeah, the
carried
woman, the woman with the big masculine dog, yeah, and the romantic pose. Oh yeah, oh
right.
yeah. There's something to that.
This is actually her
Yeah.
dating profile picture, her dating website profile picture right here. But so they carried it in and put it down. I was kind of behind them, walking in after them, and I could see as they put the dog down right in the entrance, where there's a lot of fruits on display. There was like melons and things
Mm.
like that. The dog immediately shook its body, and I saw just in
Ugh.
the sunlight the dander and hair
Right.
flying everywhere, all over the fruits that were there. And then they, proceed into the store and they walk immediately over to the cooler where the like lunch meats and things were. And they're not paying attention at all. The dog is pulling on its leash. It's clearly not a service dog. It has one of those fake
Right.
service dog vests on.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. But while they're standing there uh, talking to each other, the dog starts licking the food inside of the cooler. Like I
Mm.
visually see it. So I get my phone out and I start taking pictures, recording the dog. It starts licking the floor, it's licking the cart, it's licking the food. So I take pictures, I record it doing this, and immediately go to a store manager and I say, hey, I didn't know that you allowed pets in the store. And she was like, oh no, they're not allowed. And I was like, well, this couple has their dog and it is currently right now over there at the cooler licking food. And the manager, acts very shocked and surprised and immediately starts approaching them. And I'm still watching. And as soon as she sees the service dog vest, she says, oh,
Mm.
it's a service dog. We can't do anything. And I'm like, but it's clearly not a service dog. And even if it is, it's licking food. It's
Right.
licking the food that you're selling to the public. Like, that's a health violation. And
Right.
she said, okay, okay, I'll observe them. I'll keep an eye out. I'll watch it. And she did nothing, of course. So they proceed
Of course.
throughout the store. And I observed the dog continue to lick every food item it can reach. It's just the whole time it's not paying attention to the owner. They have spotted me by this point. They saw me. It's a small grocery store. They saw me talk to the manager. So they start, making their way across the store. I'm watching them, I'm watching the dog still licking food. I find another manager and report it to him. And by this point, the dog has started barking at people. It's just clearly their pet. It's just so clearly their pet. But the management did absolutely nothing. They weren't kicked out. I just got my stuff and left. The dog was still there when I left, barking and licking food. I reported it to the grocery store's like website and never heard
Mm.
back. So essentially, it's just, I mean, that's just the world we're living in now. Uh, these pet parents are allowed to just have their dog like contaminating our food items. And now there's no way to know. You know what I mean? The next unsuspecting customer comes in and buys a package
Hmm.
of lunch meat and it's got dog slobber all over it. And they are none the wiser. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I personally stopped buying anything from lower shelves for this very reason. This is a sore point for me because I experienced this a lot myself. I had one just about a week or two ago myself. That's the one I was talking about. She's holding it like a baby, and that one, without going deep into the story, see, because I go all out. I stop the people. Like I confront them. I don't mind. I'll confront the individual if I can spot a fake. I've spotted fakes before. One with a fake vest, for example, was walking around and just same thing. You can always tell if they're distracted, if their tail's flopping all over the place, if they're licking stuff, sniffing, making noise. They're clearly not a service dog. I stopped one time. I stopped a woman and said, "Hey, service dogs don't stop and sniff and do all that stuff like that." And she tried resisting a little bit, and she's like, "But you see what?" And then, okay, you're right. It's not a service dog. I never had it trained. And she broke down and started telling me all about it. So that was one experience, but I always confront the individual. I always I always contact the health department, and I always try to contact store management. In this most recent time, the store management pushed back on me,
No way,
like
really?
I'm the bad guy. Yeah, like and this was kind of a point I wanted to address at some point, that this is a tiresome battle, because we are the true underdogs here. Sorry, I have to use the term. I mean, everybody is conditioned to be on the side of the dog. So, oh, you don't like dogs? You don't want dogs in the grocery store? What's wrong with you? You're clearly the problem. Yeah, the store. I was talking to their corporate office, and I was getting basically abused by some secretary who was, clearly just, she was like upset with me because I was taking an anti-dog position.
That is
So this is
wild. Yeah, it's an uphill battle
it's a
for
tough
sure.
fight,
Yeah, because I'm
and
sure.
that's why back to the.
Oh
Oh, go
yeah, go
ahead. Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, as far as I knew, and I knew this when I was there, talking to the managers, they could be nutters themselves. They could have, as soon as I left, as far as I know, they
Yeah.
could have gone up to those dog owners and been like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that she was harassing." I didn't actually. I wanted
Hmm.
to, but I didn't even confront the people. Like I wanted to say something like, "I know your dog is fake. It's licking food in the store. That's disgusting. It shouldn't be in here." That's what I was thinking, but I
Right.
did not confront the people. I was very calm with the manager. I just said, "Hey, I think you should know this dog is licking the food in the store. I don't think it's a real service dog." You know what I mean? But like I said, nothing was done, and it could be because the manager herself is a nutter. And as soon as I left, went up and pet the dog. Oh, how what a cute
Sure.
puppy! It's gonna be such a great big brother or sister for your, because she was clearly, like I said, visibly expecting a child. Um,
It-
it's so good, your
yeah.
child's gonna
The
grow up with this dog protecting it, and I'm sorry for that mean lady. Like, we love dogs in the store. As far as I know, that's
yeah,
what
she
happened when I left.
probably bent down to give it a kiss. You
Right,
know
and
how
then
it goes. Yeah, just
like,
like when I had the experience with the girl, holding the dog like a baby, which that in itself is a discussion, because here you have, she was a young woman, 20 something, and carrying this dog around like it was her infant. And that in itself could lead into a whole, like, what's going on here with the maternal instinct. But yeah, when I told the manager on the store, she literally shrugged at me. I said, "There's a girl over there carrying a dog. It's clearly not a service dog." And she's like, she shrugged. Yeah, so what?
right.
I said, "What do you mean, so what? Really? Isn't it your job to sort of safeguard the food supply that you're offering the public? I mean, this is a health issue."
I know.
And it goes back. Going back to the Barbie thing and the uphill battle, kind of connecting those 2 points. How what's the Jesuit quote that, you give me a child for the first 7 years, I'll give you the man.
Yeah, yep.
So we know that childhood indoctrination is a thing, and and they know this. People who have these types of social engineering agendas, they know this. I kind of feel like, as much of an uphill battle it is, that might have to be our angle too, to try to get across to young people, like any young people that might be in your life, try to steer them away from this sort of culture. Might be the only shot,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
according to these projections, it's just going to keep getting worse. According to the people who are making profits off it.
I do have some hope in the younger generations. As the tide turns, I'm hoping that our message will continue to reach younger audiences and just everyone in general that's listening, because there's an increased level of awareness around the importance of the environment. There's an increased level of awareness on, like minimizing conspicuous consumption and overconsumption. So I'm hoping that they'll make the connection between those things and dog ownership, because like you were quoting the statistics at the beginning of the call, the amount of resources that are being consumed by dogs is just really unjustifiable if you have any concern whatsoever for like the environment. And we didn't even mention or get into like the contamination of the environment through dog waste. Oh, and I have kind of a hopeful story on that too. At the end of the school
Okay.
year, my oldest daughter's English literature teacher actually had them read an article on how much waste dogs produce and how it contaminates
Mm.
our like water supplies and stuff, which I was like, okay, is she one of us? Like that's great.
That is great. No, I'm personally, I'm way over living in a gigantic dog toilet. That's just kind of what our communities have all become. I mean, it's the idea that, I mean, human waste. If you walked around the neighborhood dumping human waste on your neighbor's lawns, in the street, on the sidewalks, if you went around doing that, I mean, that would be a problem, right? People would say that's pretty freaking gross, and probably get you arrested. But the idea that just, yeah, they can urinate everywhere, it's okay. They can defecate anywhere, so long as they pick it up. you know, uh, it's it's such a it's such a miserably low standard to live by. I think. I mean, where's our dignity as a species to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't allow all public spaces to just be a gigantic dog toilet.
Right.
I don't know. Am I crazy when I think this way?
No, and
Feel
that's an
like,
interesting. There's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about because we kind of touched on this before with like basically how humans in our society aren't cared for or treated as well as dogs. And one thing that comes to mind
yeah.
is like with homelessness, for example.
Hmm.
I've seen all of those stories about, oh, the homeless situation in like San Francisco or Los Angeles is so bad. There's just open human feces all over the sidewalks and things like this. Part of me like wonders how much of that is actually like dog shit that's being blamed, like the homeless are being blamed for. But the amount of it that is from homeless people, like why is that? You know what I mean? Like yes, it's gross and you recognize that it's gross, but why, but then you're okay with your dog just leaving steaming turds all over the place? Like how is that any less disgusting? Like your entire backyard, if you're a
Right.
dog owner, is contaminated with literal feces, and then you're going to complain about like human feces because there's a homeless population that's not being, I guess, cared for or provided with any type of like facilities. Like why can I go to the airport and there's a whole, have you seen this? There's literally rooms inside of airports for dogs to like take dumps in and pee in. Like, you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
this. Wow.
I don't know. I think ultimately what this always comes back to is dogs have supplanted humans in humans' own uh, consciousness, or there's a better way to phrase this, but I think you probably get my point. Like, concern over dogs is greater than concern over humans, which in the long
Right.
term, that's not going to bode very well for human society and human civilizations.
I've heard that phenomenon referred to as a reversion to paganism, that it's kind of a nature over humans approach to thing. And I don't mean that necessarily in like a religious or worship, in a sense, but in a sense of what are we worshiping? Are we worshiping, basically ourselves? Or elevating, maybe be a better way to put it. What are we elevating, ourselves, or are we elevating nature over ourselves? That's one way I've heard it.
That's an interesting way to look at it, but I think like in my in my view, dogs aren't really part of nature necessarily. They're like
That's true.
this
I agree with you on
foreign,
that.
they're kind of like an invasive species in a way. Uh,
Man-made at that.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, man.
exactly. Which I don't
Yeah,
know.
and left to their own, were they to be left to nature, nature wouldn't have anything to do with them. They'd be eradicated. They'd be exterminated quickly. Uh,
Right.
have you ever see uh, you ever see the very heartwarming videos of when dogs meet nature? I mean, I say heartwarming because they usually end in the same result. Where you have some goofy, like here I'm thinking of one video in particular where an actual wolf, a wild wolf, it's on like the house cam. There's like a house camera with the yard and the dogs in the yard. Wolf comes up to the property and just kind of sits right on the property line, just almost like how wolves do. They have that mystique about them, right?
Right.
It just sits kind of staring at the dog, and dog, of course, they have, of course, no sense of anything, no social boundaries, no sense of, no regard of like personal safety or common sense or anything like that. So it's bouncing around and barking and yapping and, doing all the things dogs do. And it runs right up to the wolf. So the wolf like doesn't have to even come onto the property, doesn't even have to do any effort. The dog itself is so retarded, it runs right up to the wolf. Because of course, what does a dog do when it sees something? Well, it's got to like get right in its space.
Right.
But in nature, when you do that, that's a fatal error. So the wolf just sat and waited. The dog bounced around, barked like an idiot, and ran right up to the wolf. And in one swift motion, the wolf snapped the dog's neck and carried it off, for a meal. Yeah, dogs. And not only would dogs not survive real nature, real nature seems to not like them. Like they anytime you see any kind of wild animal, they do not like dogs. Like they don't want them around. It's like nature preserves. Like how in I don't know if in your state you have, but we actually have state nature preserves. This was a recent discovery for me. I was kind of pleased about. We have state nature preserves where dogs are not allowed. They're completely forbidden because they're trying to preserve the natural ecosystem, and they don't want to have. And they even explain it. Like I'm impressed actually by it. They say, yeah, because dog urine creates a certain effect, on the wildlife. Their waste, their presence, their barking. That it's a predatory animal and affects the various. They go into great detail about why we want to have a space where nature can just be nature and there's no dogs allowed. The only problem is, of course, I've been there, and of course there's dogs everywhere. People are still bringing them everywhere.
They don't
Because
want
that
to
means,
obey those types of laws. Dog owners are the most entitled, narcissistic.
yeah, very entitled. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, well, that means somebody else's dog, not my dog. Oh,
Yeah, no,
my
my
dog's fine.
dog, my perfect little baby, this doesn't apply because, it's just perfect. And everywhere I go, it should also come with me because I can't leave it at home or else it'll crap everywhere and destroy my home. So,
Right. Yeah, I've often pondered too about how, dog owners. I think on some level they got to understand just how insufferable dogs are because they don't want to go anywhere where there's other dogs. They just want to go someplace that like, oh, there's a place where dogs aren't allowed. Well, then make an exception for mine, and that way there's no other dogs there. Yeah, I
exactly.
mean, let's not go to the dog park or someplace where there's a whole bunch of other dogs, and then I have to put up with all that nonsense. Yeah. They seem to understand on some level that dogs are a hassle. It's just not theirs. Their dog is an unique exception.
Exactly. Yeah, and like you said, there is a lot of cognitive dissonance that has to go into being a dog owner because, yeah, on some level, they have to understand. Because they themselves don't want to be around other people's dogs. Like, they want to invade the dog-free spaces, like you just said, because they know that the presence of dogs is a nuisance, except for their own dog.
Except for their dog. I'm going to I'll try to steer us back into the brood parasitism because you hit upon a point earlier, and I want to bring up I think for people who are into the anti-dog community, this is pretty common knowledge, but if maybe somebody's listening and they're not familiar, a premise that I operate, a lot of my thinking goes by is, that study they did, the study is called Dogs Hijack the Human Bonding Pathway. To me, it's such a profound study that I've got it memorized. Like that's the actual scientific paper. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
The idea that dogs have
Right up.
somehow, it's not even explained how it happens, but dogs have the capacity to hijack the oxytocin bonding mechanism in the human brain. So that is to say that we have a brain chemical, human beings do, which forms connections between one another. So it's like when you look into a parent or a child's eyes, or lovers gaze into each other's eyes. There's other ways too, but there's a chemical that's released, and this bonds you to that person. It's part of our Part of our biology makes us work as a communal species and whatnot. Well, somehow dogs can do this too to human beings. And once you hear this, I don't care how deep you are of a dog lover, like any sane, rational human being with any semblance of survival, like survival instinct, should hear that and be like, wait a minute, what? What did you just say? So there's an animal that can literally hijack our brain chemistry and trick us into loving it as if it were our own offspring?
Right.
Wait a minute,
The
what?
definition of brood parasitism, really.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And yeah, we kind of went into the parasitism thing. I don't want to get too long-winded into it, but again, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, usually that's usually a bird thing. It's seen a lot in bird kingdom, where you'll have one species. So, like, let's just say parasite species bird A will find a nest of unsuspecting species bird B, and when bird B flies away from the nest to go hunting or whatever, bird A comes in, lays their eggs amongst the other eggs, and then maybe they usually do something to eliminate the original. So, like, they'll poke holes in it with their beak or something. They'll kill bird B's eggs, leave their eggs. So when bird B comes back, they're like, oh yeah, these are all my eggs, right? I better take care of them. Then bird A is off and then doing whatever. So that's kind of usually how brood parasites work in the bird kingdom. It's a survival strategy of, we're going to get somebody else to take care of us, instead of taking care of our own offspring. It's a reproductive mechanism. And by the way, now looking at the parallels, so here we have this hijacking of our brain chemistry that tricks us into thinking, oh yeah, these are our offspring. Let's take care of them as if they were our own babies. And then what did I just say about how the birds will eliminate the original birds in some way?
Yes.
Well, who are dogs' number one targets when they attack humans?
Right.
They're always going after our children.
Exactly.
They're always going after children. And in fact, if you actually look at statistics, if you go to dogs, is it Dogs Bite or Dog Bites? I always get that confused.
It's
Dogsbite.org.
Yes. Which shout
Dogs
out
Bite.
to Dogs Bite. It's a great website. Dogsbite.org.
Dogsbite.org. Yes. Okay. So if you look at, there's a page there which I think it's like a yearly thing, and they go into specifics for each case. So they'll say the date and place and situation, who's the victim, the breed of the dog, what happened. And when you read that, it's really eye-opening, because what you read is, who are the victims? Child, infant, toddler, child, old person, child, toddler, woman, old person, child. It's almost always children. And many of those cases are the family dog attacking the infant. That story you told about the parents, the soon-to-be parents with the dog. I mean, when that baby appears, you worry about their safety, because that's their prime target. And when you understand that dogs operate on a completely different social hierarchy than humans do. Humans, unfortunately, dog lovers in particular, they misattribute all sorts of things to dogs and say, their tail's wagging, it means they're happy, and they misinterpret all their behavior and they humanize it. But if you actually study dog hierarchy, or dog social behavior, they have this hierarchy system based on dominance, aggression, and strength. That's how you have, like, the top dog is like the one that can kick every other dog's butt, right?
Right.
And then they have like a ranking system underneath that. Well, if you understand that that's how dogs operate, and that they can test one another through violence, and then you're going to put that dog along with your baby, who's now going to view that as a competition for resources. Oh, he's part of the pack. Well, I better assert my dominance over that, that little dog, right? That little skin baby. Have you heard that term yet?
Oh gosh, yes. What a terrible, disgusting term.
Oh, it is. It's gross. It's vile. Yeah. So then your dog says, oh, well, I better assert my dominance over the skin baby. And then you have, as I was just pointing to the statistics on Dogs Bite, how most of these cases are the family dog and it's infants and children, or it's a neighbor's dog, that gets loose or something like that. But the idea that, I think I've only read one case where it was, the valiant guard dog defended the home against intruders, which is what people think their dogs are going to do. That's never the case. It's always family dog, neighbor's dog, relative's dog, and children. That's who gets attacked. And that's right into the brood parasite idea. That's their number one target. They literally eliminate our young, and any sane species would have nothing to do with it. I'm giving up the mic to you. All right.
Oh yeah, no, I 1000% agree. I mean, that's exactly, I guess, the premise of this. And even if, like, I question how much dogs actually see humans as like their pack, so to speak, or like I'm a member of this pack. I think it's maybe even more pure of a brood parasite situation going on when they just eliminate the host's offspring. You know what I mean? To continue taking advantage of their, free food and shelter and things like that.
You
And
make
yeah,
a good
it's
point.
I
Yeah,
mean just
they're
this
not cooperating with the children. They're getting rid of them. Yeah, that's a good
exactly.
point.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
of like interspecies competition. And how many times, I mean, luckily, I say luckily, a lot of times these dogs are euthanized after, but it's too late. Can you imagine? I
Right.
mean, look at this on the screen. I have pulled up Dogs Bite. 2024 pet husky kills newborn sleeping in crib. I mean, can you imagine the just that we even live in a world where this is happening? I mean, they have what other species has a predator in their home, like
Right.
around their young?
Right.
Most natural animals, like let's say elephants, for example, if there's some lion stalking around the edges of an elephant society, they're probably going to try to stomp the lion to death or something. I don't know if that's probably not a
Right.
realistic example, but you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
normally, gazelles aren't bringing lion cubs to raise as their own. You know what I mean? Like, that would make no sense at all. But humans bring literal apex predators like canines into their home, and this is the result: 6 week old baby boy killed by their family's husky. I mean, it's just unfathomable to me to imagine going through something like that. And ultimately, you, the parents, are responsible. I mean, like, you're a victim, I guess, of our society that has raised you and brainwashed you into believing that dogs are these great companions and man's best friend, and your family isn't really complete unless your kids have a dog to grow up with, and the family dog, and this whole lore around dogs. But the reality is your 6 week old child that you spent the last 9 months growing in your womb and then giving birth to and bringing home is gone forever now because of a dog. I just can't even
Right.
imagine like a world in which like this continues to happen. We know that dogs kill infants every year. Like, just this year alone, I think there's at least 3 or 4 incidents in 2024 already. Halfway into the year, there's at least 3 or 4 literal infants. There was one, I think, that was like a 1 day old infant killed by a dog, and not a random dog, like you said. It wasn't some dog that ran up from the street. It was their dog that they kept in their home. I hate dogs has mentioned this, but it is child endangerment. Like, it should be viewed, if you have a dog like that in your home with an infant, like, you are endangering the child.
It's remarkable that this is even a discussion because it's so profound that, as you said, any sane species with any sense of survival does not harbor a predator that is known to attack their children. Like, one time should be enough. The very first time a child was killed by a family dog should have been where humanity has collectively said to itself, okay, you know what? It's not worth it. That
That's
one
right.
life wasn't
Yeah.
worth it.
Exactly. One
But
life is
how
worth.
many
Sorry, go ahead.
but how many do we have? No, yeah, but how many do we have? I'm quickly trying to find what our 2024 death toll is at right now, because I know I see them all the time. You see several a month. Every month they're having. So here, that's fatal dog attacks. Uh, this article is 2022. It's not very current. 98 fatal dog attacks in 2022. Right? and how many of those were children? Probably most. What amount is worth it to a dog lover? I've often told people when I try to make this argument and get point across to somebody who's deeply hypnotized by the dog love, by the hijacking mechanism. I say to them, go on your search engine of choice, type in dog bites child or dog attacks child, and then click on the images button, and then take a look at what comes up. And I'm not asking you to do that in the stream here, because you might, I don't know how graphic you want to be, but if you can look at that, and it doesn't at least get some gears going in your head, it doesn't change you at all as a human being, then you might be too far gone. Because how many is okay? How many is acceptable?
Well,
here, I'm finding more statistics.
Yeah, my answer to that is one is too many. And we know that if there are consumer products on the market that are leading to even like 1 or 2 infant deaths, those things are completely removed from the market. The manufacturer is sued into
I'm glad you said
that. But dogs just continuously. So here on Dogs Bite, husky-inflicted infant deaths. Despite huskies being infrequently involved in fatal dog maulings in the U.S., they are still among the top killing breeds, and they disproportionately kill infants. From 2005 to present, there has been 760 dog bite fatalities. Huskies have been involved in 20 of those deaths, but of the husky victims, 65% were infants less than 11 months old, and 90% were less than 5 years old. Of the 13 husky-inflicted infant deaths, 92% have information about the victim's surroundings. 10 deaths, which is 83%, involved the infant lying in a bassinet baby carrier or crib or inside a playpen. So the majority of these deaths, the baby is literally sleeping in a crib or something, and the husky targets it. I mean, it's not like...
Right. Well, no, clearly the baby provoked the husky. They pulled its fur, they yelled at, they made too much noise, they moved too quickly, they didn't move enough. They clearly provoked it, right? Somehow. Right. That's the usual nutter excuses.
I mean, I don't even know, like you said, if this isn't shocking and alarming to you and enough to say, like, we need to consider banning dogs from our civilization. Yeah. I don't know what it would take. Like, infants are the most important, the most vulnerable of our entire species, and it doesn't seem like there's any number of deaths caused by dogs that are going to have people start questioning this dog worship.
And it speaks to a larger issue of not enough value placed on our own young, that children are viewed as something, well, lesser than dogs, really. That's like its own societal issue, I think. That's a different thing.
Right. Which I think
I'm glad you brought up.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think it definitely gives credence to the brood parasite theory, because what else can explain this total disregard for the lack of concern for our own offspring's safety?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the products on the market, like children's toys and products, that if somebody, if one child swallowed something from a toy, and choked a little bit on it, even if it wasn't fatal, one child had like a mishap basically with a toy, that thing would be immediately pulled off the market, recalled, lawsuits would be issued, people would be getting, compensation, there'd be, you'd get that email. Did you buy this toy back in 2017? You may be worth, compensation. Yeah, that's what would happen. 4.5 million. I'm looking at some more statistics here. So approximately 4.5 million people a year are bitten by bitten by dogs in the United States. I'll read that again because I kind of jumbled my words. In the United States, canines bite approximately 4.5 million people a year. That's reported. Probably a lot of them aren't reported. And roughly 50% of that are for children. And, that's not talking about fatalities. Those are just dog bites. But so again, somebody like chokes on a little part of a toy, they had like a moment, they lived, but it was uncomfortable. That toy is getting yanked off the market. But 2.25 million children are bitten by dogs every year. Well, yeah, let's keep promoting them as if they're better than people.
They're man's
That's
best
that's
friend.
the famous line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're man's best friend. So they never were. That's marketing, by the way. Horses historically were man's best friend. If we want to pick an animal that helped human, I'm not even sold on the idea that because you hear people say that anthropologically there was some sort of symbiotic relationship between dogs and humans that got us this far. That they give you some kind of thing. I'm not sold on it. I don't think it's true.
Same.
I,
I
I'm not
1000%
sure.
agree with that. I think it's completely overblown. Actually, I'm going to step away for like 10 seconds, monologue on that, and I want
Oh,
to get into it more.
okay. I'm on the fire now. Let me just read some more of these statistics I'm looking at. So we got in 2022, over 5,300 USPS employees delivering mail were attacked by canines. There you go. So the stereotypical adversarial relationship between dogs and the mailman, that's a thing. And that's an interesting discussion we might want to do sometime. Is let's talk about people doing delivery jobs, as we live in a society where people are doing more and more shopping online, how these workers are constantly put in peril by these out of control animals. Dog pack attacks increased in 2023, accounting for 29% of all deadly dog bite attacks. So now they're roaming in packs. Around 20% of all dog bites need medical attention. Now, looking at those big numbers, 4.5 million people bitten a year that are recorded. 20% of that need medical attention. So that's roughly a million people a year needing medical attention for their dog bites.
Another
Approximately
insane waste of
50% of the dog.
resources.
Oh, that's a topic that would know no ends. Talk about waste of resource. Everything here. I tend to think in terms of I don't know. Maybe I'm from maybe I'm an alien or something. I don't know. I think in terms of I'm viewing our collective resources. What are all our money and resources and time and effort? What could they be directed toward? And I know for most people's lives, most people think in a very moment to moment basis. Their time is like their thoughts really don't go beyond like the next paycheck. It's like they're very focused on right now. They don't think in broad terms.
Right.
And if you did, you would start looking at some statistics like this and realize that, wow, this is a huge amount of resources, not just financial resources, but our emotional investment, our creative energies. I mean, think about all the ingenuity and design and things that could be developed that for the betterment of humanity, better medicines, better technologies, better food management systems, better everything. We could be working on that, but instead there's some knucklehead out there working on a glowing dog treat toy, or a ring cam for a dog bowl. This
I
is
know.
this is this is where applied technology, and think about all the waste happening there. It's mind-boggling when you
It
start thinking
is
about just what a wasteful endeavor this is.
completely mind-boggling. It's completely insane. It's wasteful. And I've been really thinking a lot about like the homeless issue lately because I found out something recently that I did not know, and it just made me really sad. Uh, and I don't have any statistic in front of me, so I'm kind of going off what I read by memory. This is something we could look into more another time, but
Mm.
a large percentage of people who experience homelessness are children that aged out of the foster care system and just had nowhere to go. That is
Yeah.
so unbelievably sad to me. I didn't realize that. It makes sense now, like when I read about it. Just imagine, like you were reading the statistics earlier, the billions of dollars for the pet industry. what could we do with those billions of dollars to help
Hmm.
children who, had to go into the foster care system, which we know is, high levels of abuse that they experience, even in foster care, not to mention the circumstances that they came from that led them to, being placed into foster care. And then only to end up, aging out of what meager assistance is available from the state and ending up just on the streets. It's just dogs are treated better than that. And it really is something that humanity should be ashamed of.
Yes. See, this is why you and I have such good conversations. We're on similar wavelengths on a lot of these things, and I've been looking into this very same thing. I even have some statistics right here. I was thinking about this topic of homelessness, and I was
Well, we're
thinking
on
about
the
on a very
same
personal
wavelength.
level. See, I'm even thinking on a personal level. Now, the situation you just described, the children growing out of foster homes, the amount of even children in foster care, orphans in general. And then you think about how you meet people like the previously mentioned dinkwads, the dual income, no kids with a dog types. You think there's a scruffy, worthless, furry, filthy, disease spreading, parasite ridden. I mean, I can go on. You get the idea. There's one of those occupying a nice house somewhere, probably has like a nice bed, probably has its own room, gets fed nice fresh meat, it's vitamins and CBD oil, all that great stuff. And meanwhile, there's a child. You just think even one child. Think of like the starfish story. The starfish story, how like all the starfish are washed up on the beach and the child's throwing him back in the water and is like, well, you can't save, there's millions of them. You can't save them. Well, yeah, okay, but I can save this one. Boom. You just think in those terms. You think like one child. Get rid of that stupid dog, and that same parents with the resources and income that they have and the love that they're willing to provide to somebody. Imagine if that were directed towards a human child that needed it. And
Right.
start looking at some of these social issues, start to heal.
I mean, the most well
It
taken
is something
care
to be.
of, yes, the best dog on earth, right? Let's say there's the best good boy in the world,
Oh,
for some
yeah.
reason, let's say, or like even the dog you said, the one time a dog kept an intruder out or something like that. Even that one best dog in the world, like, what will it actually ever do? Like, you know what I mean? Beyond that, maybe you're making someone happy, like petting it and stuff. Like, it's never going to achieve. But imagine that there was the one child in foster care that was brilliant and bright and had a light,
Hmm.
and they didn't have
And they had
like
the potential
they had such
to create
potential,
something.
and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
they just
yeah.
they don't get this any support from like actual humanity, and end up like just, it was interesting because I didn't mention this earlier, but this whole conversation reminded me when I walked into the grocery store where that couple was carrying the dog in. It was such a
Mm,
juxtaposition. I wish I had a picture. I would put it on the screen because there was a homeless man sleeping on the
mm.
ground right outside the grocery store that we walked past. Like,
Wow.
so you have this couple
Yeah,
carrying a
right,
dog
right to the point.
inside because its paws might get hot on the concrete, and they walk right past a man laying on the hot concrete outside the grocery store. It's just
Amazing,
such just
amazing.
a picture of our society right there. Just like an image
Yeah,
speaks a thousand words. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to think about like the children that had the light of humanity in them and never got like a chance, and then you have all of these billions of dollars on dogs that will never, they don't have that because they're not humans. They don't have the soul. They don't have, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying that. I don't think dogs have a soul. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that they have the light of humanity, that spark that we have that separates us. Like, the ability to
right.
create and just all of that being wasted. It's like a dark force funneling our human creativity and our ability to advance or grow as a species into these creatures that do nothing but like shit and kill infants. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, pardon my language, but it just
brilliantly
makes me
said.
upset.
No, no, even with that, brilliantly said. I'll say, These are such strong points, and these are the types of things that, when I'm feeling anguish on the subject, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking about. Just what a tragedy it is as a species that we would allow ourselves to, allow these things, whatever they are. I mean, and I know we've had discussions before about there may be other elements to what they are. Even I don't know. We know that they can somehow alter our brain chemistry, and I think the evidence for them being a form of a brood parasite, that's pretty strong. I'm also personally, I'm of the thought that they also, of course, harbor a lot of parasites. So I'm like the little girl in the taco commercial. I say, why not both? They are parasites and they carry parasites. And those parasites probably have some sort of effect on the whole dynamic too, because they have their own agenda. So, in fact, I view dogs as like a Russian nesting doll of parasites. So like the dogs are a parasite, and then they have parasites, and their parasites probably have parasites. So they're like they're like a Matryoshka doll,
Oh yeah, totally.
parasites and parasites and parasites.
They're definitely a
Uh,
vector for parasites. I just saw an article where a boy had like hookworms, I think, in his foot from
hmm.
going to the
Where would you
beach.
get that? Yeah,
Yeah, that comes
yeah,
from like dog feces. And who takes their dogs
yep.
to the beach to shit all over our beautiful like sandy beaches, you know?
I was thinking about this recently about how, and I don't know if this is a product of aging, because a lot of things as you get older and you kind of learn more about the world, you become more of a curmudgeon. Like you realize just how things suck because of your awareness. So like when you're young, you may not think anything of it. You just run around barefoot. Yeah, I'm young, I'm free, it's fun, right? Boom, boom. But then you get older and you realize, no, wait, there's like dog crap everywhere. You can't walk barefoot outside anymore
Oh,
because
yeah. No, I
you
don't
know.
let anyone wear shoes in my house. Like, you take your shoes off at the
Good.
door for when you get here because, yeah, what are you walking? Even if you think you're on a nice, clean sidewalk or like the grocery store, there's dogs in there now. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just our environment doesn't have to be this contaminated. Our children don't need to be this unsafe. This is all things that can be. See, like, some deaths are unpreventable, right? Death is a part of life. But a lot of this stuff is
Mm,
preventable. This infant did not have to die.
right. And deaths, of course, being the tragedy they are. Let's not forget too, just children who are maimed by dogs. They get horrible facial scars that they're gonna have to live with the rest of their life. That's going to affect them socially and psychologically. Then you're going to have children who are dismembered in certain ways. Like there's a story recently, and not recent, it's kind of old now. But the same, it was an infant. It was an infant in a crib, and the mother left the room to do something for like 5 minutes. And when she came back, the dog had eaten the child's fingers, like had eaten
Yeah.
off eight of the child's fingers. The little infant, right? So can you imagine? You're like a baby. You're in your most vulnerable state. You're supposed to be protected by your parents, and yeah, so they leave you alone with a predator animal that gnaws off eight of your fingers, and now you're crippled for life, right? For whatever life that child has ahead of them. I mean, that's not going to be easy. So that's yeah, none of it's worth it. So why? How the parasite factor? I touched upon the brain hijacking. I think you pulled that up. I got so many windows going on right now.
I love it. This is a great conversation, and I love
Yeah,
conversations like this to be happening and to be shared.
yeah. I admit, yeah. This feels very good. I feel the weight. I think I told you in a message a while ago something about feeling the. I can't remember how I said it, but you're just feeling weary from all the defeats. It feels like downright defeats whenever you face this stuff, and then you get that store manager who shrugs at you and said, "So what if there's a dog in our grocery store?" Or you get the person whose dog is on the protected land, and they want to tell you how it's their right to do so. And then when you even when you and I'm not the type of guy. Look, I'm Generation X, and we're kind of like that more you know, rough and tumble, independent. We were the latchkey kids and whatever. Like we usually figure out how to do stuff ourselves. We don't like run, going to run and tell to the authorities. But even when I do end up finally doing that, it's like, and they still, oh no, yeah, that's fine, or the laws don't agree with you there, and it's like insanity, and it wears you down, and feel like, oh, sometimes I feel like nothing that can be said is going to make a difference. But hey, if a great conversation like this can maybe somebody will hear it one day, and it'll set one gear in the right direction in their brain, then maybe it's all worth it. I don't know. I'll try to be optimistic.
Yeah, no, you have
Try to be
you have to
optimistic.
be because what else? I mean, you can't fall into despair. Like things got to this point, and they can go back. At least that's kind of my hope. And the more, I think part of the problem is this information just isn't widely disseminated. Like even our news, so-called news, agencies and journalism fails spectacularly because they'll report things like I saw the way there was another infant killed by a husky, and it was reported uh, as the dog's tooth penetrated the child's skull. Like the language they
Right.
use, the passive, it's always the
Yeah.
most, or it'll be tragic accident involving dog. Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, it means the dog ripped the child limb from limb in its own home where it was
Yeah.
supposed to be safe. Like, let's say what it is. Let's describe it how it is. It's horrific, and it should be shocking and viscerally upsetting to humans so that we can stop letting this happen. I just think if more people said, you know what, I'm not coming over to your house, family member, because I don't want my kids around your dog. Your dogs are dangerous. I don't want to put my kids in a dangerous situation. You know what I mean? If we just started
Yep.
doing more of that in mass, it should have at least some kind of
That's my,
effect. Even if the only effect is that you
that's
protect
my
your own
personal
child
policy.
from getting bitten by some family member's
Right.
dog.
Right. Yeah, that's my personal policy. If they have a dog, I don't go in the house. And I want to say about that, the child being bit on the skull. I bet you, I guarantee that story told you the name of the dog. They tell you the dog's name, and they humanize the dog, and then they talk about the dogs, like how it affected the dog. Well, it was a terrible experience, and the dog was, upset, and yeah, and yeah, and by the time you read the article, you'll know the dog's name. That's how the so-called news always approaches it. The dog is somehow human, better than human.
Yeah, there was a recent story. I think I Hate Dogs covered it in depth, but there was a young girl who was mauled by the family dog, and I'm pretty sure they did say the dog's name. And they made sure to really hit home on how much the mother had suffered because not only was her daughter mauled, that's less important, her dog had to be
Right.
put in quarantine, and then that mother went and got the dog out of the quarantine or whatever it was, and brought it back home because she couldn't bear the thought of the dog being either. I don't even think they were going to euthanize the dog. I think they were going to give it to someone else, like adopt it out. Like they weren't going to send it back to
Wow.
the home where it attacked the child. They weren't even going to euthanize it. They were just going to, pass the problem along to someone else. And the mother couldn't bear the thought of that. So she herself went and got the dog that had mauled her own daughter. I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
is that
What
not
happened?
rude
Can you
parasitism?
imagine? Can you imagine being? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's all. I was just gonna say. I mean, your own child's safety is less concerning to you than the supposed dog's distress at being in someone else's house or something.
That brings. I got a whole flood of thoughts just from that one story. So, first off, I'll tell you a personal anecdote that reminds me of something about many years ago, when I was a younger man, and perhaps a little more appealing to the opposite sex. And I had a girlfriend at the time who, well, she was a bit crazy, but she had a crazy sister who was like crazy and super aggressive. And so you see where this is going to go. Like, aggressive person? Oh, could she also have perhaps an aggressive animal? Oh, yes, she did. And her aggressive dog actually did bite me on the leg one time, tore through the pants. I mean, it wasn't like, a catastrophic, like life-changing bite, but, it was broke skin, and it was, ruined my, ruined my clothes. And,
Right.
well, and this, even going back to your story and my story both, anytime a dog bites a human, period, that should be it.
Exactly.
One shot, one strike, you're out. eliminated. That should be our policy. Once it's demonstrated that the animal has the capacity or intention to attack humans, that should be it for it. We shouldn't keep that around. But no, instead they did the whole thing where the dog had to go into quarantine, just like you said. And I remember specifically, nobody was checking on me. Nobody was like, "Hey, how's your wound? Does it look infected?" Anything like that. Nobody cared about me. But I was getting calls from the crazy aggressive sister about how my dog is suffering right now in quarantine because of you.
Wow.
Saying that, like, I'm making her dog suffer because how? Like, I didn't at the time, like, what are you even talking about? So what, am I supposed to just tell you, okay, let him out of quarantine because I say it's okay? Like, what,
Clearly,
or is it my fault because
you shoved your leg into the dog's mouth and caused it to suffer.
that was yeah that was the other logical option, was that somehow it was clearly my fault that the dog bit me. And astonishing. So that was my second and third point I want to make, and no, first and second point. Third point I want to make was that regarding the story you told. Can you imagine being that daughter? And when you're a child, maybe a lot of this stuff will go over your head. Like, even at the time, I think, and I wasn't a child, I was just younger. I think a lot of that went over my head, like just the significance of that, how they weren't, they didn't care about me at all. They cared about the dog was suffering in quarantine. Like, oh no. And probably, what, suffering? Probably it was hanging out like with a bunch of dog nut, caretakers that were like feeding it, like a king. So like,
Right.
it was probably being treated great. I was the one suffering with a big giant, wound on my leg. But can you imagine when that child in this story you told, when she grows up, if if she, let's be hopeful, and let's say if her consciousness evolves to the point where she realizes just what a crappy situation that was and what a crappy thing her mother had did, not only putting her in danger, but then prioritizing the dog's comfort over her daughter's welfare. Can you imagine what a head trip that's going to be, as far as the relationship with her mother, and how that's gonna pan out, and her own, like, her value, and realizing that, my mother maybe wasn't the best parent, uh, you know giving that dog priority over me in that situation.
Right.
Yeah, can you imagine? That's a small bit of that is a small ray of hope I see in the younger generation. I know we were talking before about the youth changing things. I think we're at such a tipping point now with this awful dog behavior, that there are so many young people who are living this stuff firsthand, that there's a chance that they might wake up one day and say, "Wait a minute, that was wrong. That was really bad. We shouldn't repeat those mistakes." And
Yeah,
hopefully we get a generation of anti-dog people from this.
I agree. I think that it's maybe, hopefully, inevitable. Um, the risk I see is, a child, like you said, not really having the level of consciousness yet, to understand, could, internalize these feelings from the mother, like feel even guilty for being attacked or something, like, oh, I did something that caused my mom to be sad because the dog, or I don't know, just
Mm,
not in those terms, but just like, because children feel things they might not like understand exactly.
right.
Uh, so I'm sure on some level the child like picked up on, what I mean, feelings of being guilty, the mom being upset, and like maybe she did something wrong. Because it's clear that the mom
Right.
doesn't have the consciousness to tell the daughter, you didn't do anything wrong, the dog bit you and that was bad, now we got rid of the dog to keep you safe. I mean, that's not the message the daughter is getting. The message the daughter is
Right.
getting by her mom's actions is, oh my god, what happened? What did you do? The poor dog
Hmm.
is now gone, and I'm so upset about the dog. Like, you got bit. Oh, thank God we got the dog back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the child's not going to understand what's going on, but they're going to understand and see the mom's behavior, and they're going to, like, internalize that. You know what I mean? Uh, but hopefully, like you said, when she gets older, she'll be able to recognize, like, oh, wow, my mom was really way wrong in this scenario. And hopefully, she won't expose her future children, if she has any, to similar circumstances where her own child could get bit or mauled or whatever. I don't know. That's my hope,
I can
anyways.
I No, they're all good points. I want to, something just came to mind. I want to talk about a comment on the "Our Dog's a Parasite of People" post that you
Yes.
referenced early in the we talked about early. There
Coming
was a
full
comment here.
circle.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying to be quasi professional here and keep coming back to a topic. And that's great that you selected one. So yeah, it's a good launching point. But there's so much to talk about, of course.
Right.
But there was a comment I saw that I did like here. It said this is from Tom Quixote. He's pretty active. I don't know if I should be naming people. Well, shout out to Tom Quixote. There you go.
Honestly, yeah,
He
no,
makes
shout
some
out to
good
him
insightful
because,
comments.
yeah, he turned me onto this
Oh,
brood
really? Oh,
parasite
you know him?
concept. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he does talk about it a lot. And he did, in his comment here, he says, in any group of organisms, there will be some individuals with a greater resistance to the parasite. Yeah. So he said, yes, dogs are brood parasites, but in any group of organisms, there will be some individuals with greater resistance to the parasite. And he's speaking to the OP here. He says, and you seem to be one. So I thought that was a really fascinating statement that, because I've often wondered, I've thought about myself. I said, why am I so impervious to this stuff? Why is it, when I get people who, I had a woman, I had a woman recently, just another anecdote, telling her, somehow the subject came up because I'm I don't hide this at all in public. Like I don't have a double life with this. If somebody brings up a dog, I immediately express my disgust and I try to quickly get in there as many points as I can on the slim hope that maybe it'll awaken somebody's consciousness, even just a tiny bit. And so if somebody brings up a dog or their dog or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that's gross, or so yeah, so the woman came up with the dog and she started talking about dogs, and I started expressing what a huge problem they are in society. And her immediate response was, "Oh, but look at my dog. It's so cute." And she went to grab her phone. She's like pulling out pictures, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. So I just told you I don't like dogs. They're a blight upon society. They ruin relationships. They destroy the environment. They attack children. They spread disease. They lower the consciousness of the species of our species just by their sheer cohabitation with ours." And your immediate response is, let me pull out some pictures, show you mine because it's so darn cute.
Right.
And so I expressed to her, I'm like, well, look, I'm immune to that stuff. You can show me it. I don't care how cute you think it is. So she showed me, and I said, yeah, it's pretty gross looking. Thanks. But I've often wondered that back to Tom Quixote's statement. I said, yeah, how is it that some of us can be so immune and see these as I would call them truths? I've criticized before the quote truther community out there, people who are they talk about the government and they talk about the conspiracies and all this, but who's talking about dogs? This is huge. This is a huge thing, and how is it that there's this very very tiny segment of us that are immune to this thing? I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, I know. I
You
wish
know?
I wish I knew. That's something I've pondered on. I've tried to look up research papers because you talked about the article, and I've read other articles similar to that, where it seems to be like an oxytocin pathway that has been hijacked. So I've wondered,
Right.
is there something with our oxytocin response that's different? Is there something like we aren't having the same,
Mm.
secretion of oxytocin when we look at a dog? You know what I mean? Like, is that what it is? Do
Yeah.
we have different levels of oxytocin? Do these dog nutters, like, if you find the most extreme dog nutters and tested them, would they have like a hyperactive oxytocin response? Like, yeah, I
Um,
don't know. I've tried, and there isn't research being done on that because even if you read these articles where they straight up say dogs are hijacking our oxytocin, they'll conclude with like that being a good thing somehow, or like,
right.
it's
Yeah, I've
because
seen that.
dogs and humans have bonded throughout history so strongly, and how great, isn't it amazing that another species has been able to adapt with our oxytocin? I mean, the conclusion, no matter what the study shows, is always positive for the dog human relationship, which really boggles
And
my mind.
that conclusion, yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, okay, they say, isn't it so great that this has happened? How? What's so great about it? What's to our advantage? There's there's literally nothing that dogs, we know, there's literally nothing dogs provide of any real value besides what people project onto them. So and you can do that with a stuffed animal. You can make those same projections onto anything. You can do that with a stuffed animal, or gasp another human being. You could do that.
Right.
That reminds me of a bit of a segue here, but you ever see where they have young children now reading to dogs? It's like part of their
Yes.
school program.
Yeah.
And like, what value is that? If you want to learn to read in public, you want to learn to read to people, you know what the best way to do that is? Read to people. I remember when I was a child, we would read to other children. We didn't read to no stupid dog. Was a dog going to give me like a standing ovation for my oratory proficiency? You'd be like, oh yeah, you didn't, yeah, doesn't even understand what I'm saying. Doesn't
Right. It
understand
doesn't
anything unless you're sticking
understand.
food in its face.
Exactly.
Mm.
And I think that also it's a very anti-human, like always. It's
Yes.
always an anti-human because I've read into that a little bit. I've looked into that, and the claim is, oh, it's better for kids because the dog can't scoff at them or they don't feel nervous because the dog doesn't actually understand, so they can just read without fear of being, judged or ridiculed by other kids who might laugh at them and stuff. And again, that just feeds into this concept that dogs are a better companion because you'll never have to experience any pushback from your dog. Your spouse might not like
Mhm.
if you come in and leave your underwear laying around all over the place or something. But the dog doesn't
Right.
care, and that's portrayed as superior. You know what I mean? Like it's better
Right.
to have basically what are they saying? Is it better to have like no standards and no concern over your behavior that could offend other people? Like you should just it's kind of like this might be a little esoteric, but the whole like do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's kind
Hmm.
of this like
I was just thinking this exact thing.
yeah, like this
Wow.
Aleister Crowley, I
Yep.
don't know,
Yep. Yep.
occult view. And this is a whole other topic I want to do a separate call on, just like
Yeah.
the relationship
This
with
wor-
dogs and the occult. Um,
this is worth a whole series. We should do
yeah, we
we should
should.
do
I really want
a deep
to.
dive, because that's exactly what I was thinking about as you were saying that. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So
Wow.
you
See.
have this whole, I guess, like outlook on the way you should be living your life is only for seeking your own pleasure, your own
Hmm.
happiness. That's literally do as thou wilt. Is the whole of the law. Like it's all about extreme narcissism, uh, and dogs just are kind of the perfect, I guess, symbol for that because it can't ever push back on you. It can't ever tell you no. It can't ever say what you did is not right, what you did is not good, like this is unacceptable. It's never going to do any of the things that a human might do. Uh, so you're free, I guess, kind of to just be a slob or be a terrible person and then still think that you're amazing and great because your dog in your mind loves you or whatever for who you are. I don't know. I think it's like training kids in that mindset of like, who cares what other people might think? Who cares what other people might say? You can just talk to this dog and it will never question you. I don't know.
Right. You just hit upon that. You just like hit a grand slam of points there. That was amazing. And there's a lot like, yeah, when we're talking about children now here, this might be an unpopular thing. And I, of course, I don't advocate abuse and bullying and anything like that, but ridicule has a purpose, in a social dynamic. There's a reason for that. So okay, yeah, you don't want to be made fun of when you read to an audience. So when someone makes fun of you, then it's going to force you into you turn that into, well, now I'm going to do better in this way so that it doesn't happen again,
Right.
right? And it's, I don't know, it's this whole concept that humans should be raised without any sort of pushback at all. I'm not sure if that's working. I'm not sure if it's working out for us. Like, look at the results of what's happening in our world right now from, do it thou wilt, zero pushback type of approach to things. And I think, I mean, now I'm not for like, people shouldn't be heavily bullied or tormented or, physically abused or anything like that. But, someone should tell you, hey, you sounded funny when you said that. And that should be okay. That's an okay form of feedback. The
Yeah.
idea that we can't have anything remotely similar to that, well, what are the results? What do we have? What are we getting from it? It's not looking good.
No, I think,
So,
yeah, it's creating an increasingly atomized society with an increasing number of just narcissistic individuals, a like overall lack of the ability to cooperate or the willingness to cooperate,
yeah,
being just okay with like echo chambers, not having any of your thoughts or opinions, critiqued, or even not even needing to be able to defend your beliefs and thoughts and stuff, like, which is an important skill like we should have as humans. We should be able, if we believe in something, we should be able to defend it or explain it or debate it. You know what I mean? Because I thought the
right,
goal of humanity was to come to understandings and to come to conclusions and to question ourselves and learn from our experiences. Like you said, I know that every kid probably experiences some level of bullying or whatever. And again, it goes without saying, I'm not advocating bullying or abuse of any
right,
kind. But I was made fun of for different things growing up. I think pretty much every kid has similar experiences. But like you said, it made me self reflect. And do they have a point here? Should I improve this? And
right,
I have strived throughout my life to improve myself. And continuously ask for feedback and ways that I can improve. Like, I think, what is the point, I guess, of being a human and just living and experiencing things if you're not striving, I don't know, to like gain something from it or learn or improve and continue to grow? Like, if you're not growing, you're dead, right? Like, if you're not learning.
right.
But dogs kind of are a symbol of not really ever having to like evolve or grow or whatever. They're a very base animal. They're dirty. That lowers the quality and standards of living for the people who own them. Like, you're okay with levels of filth in your
Mm,
home. You're okay with, spending your time picking up poop outside. Like, it's just a low
right.
level of existence.
And I've noticed that dog owners seem to become they synchronize with their dog's behavior. So, obviously the dog's not going to evolve to a human level of a standard of consciousness or behavior. It simply can't. So, what do the dog owners? Have you noticed that dog owners seem, well? I know this is seem a gross generalization, but don't they often seem hyper aggressive, uh, sensory based, instinct based? Like they behave like they're animals.
Yes.
And I don't know if maybe the cause and effect is up to debate, but yeah, it's holding. I've said before that dogs are holding back human development, human evolution, and this is one of the ways that I think that they do it. That it gives humans an excuse to behave like animals. You elevate animal-like behavior, and you say, "Oh, isn't that great? How dogs just, they go around and they sniff and they bite and they eat and whatever, and we should be the same way too. Do what thou wilt, right?"
Right. No,
Uh,
totally. One thing,
yeah.
one lesson that my dad imparted on me growing up very strongly was kind of like birds of a feather flock together. You
Mm,
don't want. He was very aware of who I would be spending my time with or who I was hanging out with, and he was very strict on not allowing me, I guess, to spend time with certain people that he didn't think were a good influence or wouldn't be a good
mhm.
influence. I mean, that was something he was always very paying attention to. He didn't let me just go out and do whatever I wanted or spend time with anyone that I just wanted to. And I think that you're absolutely right, because if you're spending a lot of your time with dogs, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
you're probably going
you become like a
to,
dog.
yeah, which, and that is kind of an interesting thing we can talk about more on another call. Something I'd like to go into is all of the ways that humans have used dogs historically as examples of things you don't want to be or be like. Just think of some of the common phrases we're familiar with, like
Yeah.
if you lay down with dogs, you'll wake up with fleas. They didn't.
Right.
That wasn't specifically meant about dogs. It was just like if you're hanging around with bad people, you're going to kind of become a bad person. But now people are literally laying down with dogs, and it's kind of just weird that we've devolved, I guess, from recognizing dogs as kind of like a perfect metaphor for filth, negativity, danger, dirtiness. You know what I mean? Like we use them
Hmm.
historically in our writing and allegories and stuff as uh, something negative. And now it's like
Right.
totally inverted on itself, which I think is an interesting topic in and of itself, is how everything's been inverted. Um, and I think a lot of this dog culture is part of that inversion.
And we all know, you and I at least know, where inversion is often. When you see inversion, where like when you see smoke, there's fire. When you see inversion, what do you see? There's usually certain belief systems that drive that sort of thing,
Right.
which there are ties to. Yeah, we know, and that's probably that'll have to be its own series. We need like a we
Oh,
need a whole run on
definitely.
that.
Yeah, no, I
That's
totally.
going to be.
Last time we talked, I mentioned I was reading the Sons of Sam book by Maury Terry, and that just
Hmm.
opened up a whole, I guess, can of worms, if you will, or just a whole rabbit hole in and
What
of
was that?
itself. Do what?
What was that? Now, was that with the German Shepherds? Is that the
It's
group?
related, yeah, the Process Church of the Final Judgment. But there's a
Yeah.
whole, like you said, it'll have to be a series because it's not just that one thing. It's like a whole, the more you dig into it, the more threads you find, and it's this entire web that has really impacted our current society. And I think it's things that are, if you just start scratching the surface, you would be amazed. So yeah, it will have to be its own series. But uh, just as a kind of a teaser, um, the
Yeah.
Process Church is now Best Friends Animal Society, which, as you know, is the
Right.
major like pit bull um,
Yep.
advocacy group, and they have, I think, thousands of acres of land under their control and just millions
In
of
in
dollars.
Utah, yeah,
And there's a
yeah. It's
whole
like the largest animal reserve in Utah, I think.
Yeah, and there's like a weird, just dark underbelly of that. There was like pornography production associated. Like I
Right.
said, it's gonna have to be a
Yeah.
whole other
No, it's fascinating stuff, and it makes you. And when you think about, and we've discussed before about too, about how the idea of a pro pit bull lobby. I mean, like who in their right minds to say, okay, these things are indisputably dangerous.
Oh
They're
yeah,
objectively dangerous.
the
I mean,
vast
even more
majority
so
of
than your average
killings.
dog.
Yeah.
They're they're they have more killing intent. They have more physical ability. And that, that's it's what they're specifically bred to do, was to fight and maim and injure and kill. And this notion, oh, they're nanny dogs. They're great with kids. Oh, this notion that we're going to take some killer breed of dog and kind of condition the public to think that they're harmless and family friendly cute puppies. There's possibly a deeper agenda to all that.
Oh,
That
absolutely. I
you
mean,
know,
talk about an inversion. Taking the most
yeah,
dangerous breed known, and portraying it as just the safest breed, I guess, or the best,
yeah.
not only just in
Oh, the
general,
most
but
family
around
friendly.
children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're great with kids. They're nannies. Didn't you know? Didn't you know that they were originally nanny dogs?
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I've seen, there's that picture that floats around whenever you hear somebody that gives that argument, and they'll drudge up that one picture, and it's a black and white photo with the pit bull on the left, and it's sitting next to a baby on the right. You've undoubtedly seen it, and they say, "Didn't you know that originally they were a nanny dog?" I'm like, "Yeah, the actual history of that. I'll need to pull it up and get the names. There was a dog breeder in the early 20th century, maybe late 19th, early 20th century, who he was a pit bull breeder for dog fighting, right? And in the process of breeding his killer fighting dogs, of course, the rejects would come up that they didn't make the cut. They wouldn't survive in the ring. So he had the brilliant marketing idea of, well, let's market them as family friendly and sell them to families. So that was the invention of one specific dog breeder back in the early 20th century, and people at the time knew it was bullshit. Sorry,
No, that's
sorry to I don't know if it was being people at the time knew it was a lie, and they yet somehow about 100 years later now they're falling for it. And that's people right now are so disconnected from reality, like any sense of how reality works or how things work. They're so I don't know this, and this isn't just on the dog topic. It's in general. People are
yeah.
so disconnected from reality that it's like we're almost primed for these types of things. Oh yeah, I totally believe it was a nanny dog. Yeah, that how can you? You just use your own observational skills. History aside, just use your senses. What's ahead of you, and say, does that look like something that's safe to be around a baby?
Right. It's almost like you
But
couldn't have set
yeah,
it up better for like maximizing the amount of destruction that's going to happen. You know what I mean? It's almost like you
right.
couldn't have tried to make it more likely that, children and
I
stuff are going to
mean,
be killed by these dogs. It's really, yeah, just mind-boggling.
yeah, it's almost like it was a setup to make it happen, and then you think like who and why, and there's a lot to it. This isn't just. I know that anybody who's maybe if anybody hears this and they're maybe hearing this information for the first time, and they're like, what are these guys talking about? And they think we're kind of making stuff up, or it sounds right. No, this stuff gets deep. It's rabbit holes upon rabbit holes about there's some there's some definite dark agendas here behind these, especially the pro pit bull lobby.
Yeah,
There's some dark stuff.
I think
So that's why I said at the beginning of the show. I'm sorry, I'll just say real quick.
no, go
At the
ahead.
beginning of the show, when I said about the multi-headed facets of this dog thing, it's not just about a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's not just about the dog's capacity to trick our brains. It's not there's all sorts of things going on here, and the idea that there are people who want dangerous dogs around children is a thing. It is a real phenomenon. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to build off that. And I think, yeah, for our next call, the next episode, if you will, I would like to maybe um, get into that. So, again, like kind of a teaser here, maybe kind of wrapping this one up and teasing the next one.
Mm.
Um, it's, yeah, I don't even know where to start. Yeah, we'll have to do a series, but basically, everything we are talking about, anyone interested could start kind of looking it up themselves. But the Process Church of the Final Judgment was this kind of strange uh, countercultural movement emerging around the same time as what we think of as like the hippie movement in the 60s. um, and there are connections with Charles Manson directly. So the Process Church actually featured Charles Manson in one of their publications. Like they had like a magazine type of thing or like a newsletter at the time before he became famous for the Manson murders and the Manson family. Uh, because he was very, I guess, tuned into this sort of countercultural revolution that was kind of taking place underneath the surface of traditional, like, American and British society. Because the Process Church actually emerged out of England, if I'm not mistaken. And they were pretty much, their stated goal was to create chaos in society because I guess in their worldview, they thought that the creation of chaos in society would help bring about kind of like a new age type of thing. It's very weird. And so simultaneously, or like almost simultaneously, you had like serial killers becoming a phenomenon in American culture. Uh, and so there's just these weird connections. You can start following these threads from this countercultural movement, very heavily fueled by drugs and violence. A lot of people view the hippies as this kind of peaceful, peace-loving, anti-war, I guess, movement, which I think part of it was. But underneath the surface of that, it was actually extremely violent, there was a lot of heavy drug usage and stated goals at causing like societal breakdown and chaos, to bring about kind of like a new order, a new order of the ages type of stuff. So it's just bizarre that out of that milieu comes now today this like massive pit bull push. And then like I have statistics pulled up here, and it's saying, in 2019, for the first time on record, adult victims in the 30 to 49-year-old age group sustained more dogfight fatalities than child victims in the 0 to 4 age group, and pit bulls inflicted 85% of the adult deaths. In
Right.
2019, pit bulls killed all age groups, but whereas other dog breeds combined primarily killed children under the age of 2 and adults greater than 50 years old. So, pit bulls are capable of killing not only children, which they do, but able-bodied men. I mean, you're seeing stories about,
Right.
grown able-bodied men being mauled to death by pit bulls. That's how dangerous these things are. And again, children and women are, primarily the most common victims, but these dogs are capable of taking down, grown men. And that should tell people something, you know what I mean? Like here it says, from 2005 to 2019, pit bulls killed 346 Americans, a rate over 6.5 times higher than the next closest breed, which is Rottweilers, with 51 deaths. I mean, it's
And
just
that's a big gap.
yeah,
That's not like a close second. It's a huge lead.
huge. And these are the
Yeah.
dogs that
Order
they're primarily promoting, almost exclusively, as
those are
far
the
as I
ones
know.
they're the ones filling up the shelters. And if you think about who's doing a shelter rescue, these are people that are, they're doing an emotional thing. They've been kind of, dare I say, conned into, oh, let's save a poor needing, animal in need, and they know nothing about dogs. So you're going to give them the most violent, most dangerous breed you can. And of course it's been, handed around from different place to place, and not the best living conditions in shelters. So yeah, it's like a recipe for disaster. Order out of chaos, as you say.
Exactly.
That was
That
the idea.
was the idea.
You know, and can I say too that Best Friends Animal Society? I'll have to look this up, but I read somewhere. I think it's right on their website that they actually promote that whole dogs are better than humans idea that you keep seeing. I think I sent you a thing too about like somebody that they'll show a picture of a bunch of pit bulls and they'll say be good to them because they're better than humans. This is the sentiment. You hear people say this. Oh, dogs are better than people. Yeah, that's an idea they promote.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, who else used to promote that? Well, Adolf Hitler used to say it. He'd say his dog was better than people. Just
Right.
saying. Yeah, it's
Well, if you look
you're
up
going you're
uh, Best Friends Animals, or I say Best Friends Animal Society, which I guess is essentially the same thing, but let's just take a look real quick since we're kind of teasing people for next time. Let's take a look at what the Process Church of the Final Judgment's symbol looked like and their color scheme.
mm,
Have you seen this?
yep. Yeah.
Let's see if we can
Oh yes.
find it. Oh, where is their
Oh yes.
symbol?
I this is a fascinating whole rabbit hole to get
It
into.
is, and I'm hoping people will tune in next time where we can really. Okay, so this is their symbol.
Yeah.
Um,
Just saying.
kind of an interesting. And I believe I
Just
read, and we'll get into this more next time when I prepare some research, but supposedly this symbol is composed of 4 L's, and the L's I think meant something like I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. We'll get into it more, but yeah, you can see their symbolism here, and they had a kind of strange worldview, if you will. And yeah,
Yeah.
today
Well,
they are the Best Friends
they
Animal
were tied.
Society.
I'm sorry. Go say that one more time so the viewers hear it,
Oh, I'm
please.
just saying, yeah, today the Process Church is the Best Friends Animal Society. they've splintered.
Right, which is the largest pro pit bull group. That they're the ones that are overturning anti pit bull laws. So see, while you and I sleep, dear viewers, while we sleep, there's very proactive, very well funded pro pit bull lobby out there, which are overturning laws in across the nation, and they're saying, oh, you guys like have an anti pit bull law. Well, that's discriminatory. That's racist. They'll do whatever, right? They'll say whatever, and then they got lawyers and they got funding, and they get in there and they work to overturn those laws, and they work against breed specific legislation, and this is the group. This is the group that's doing it. That's
Yeah, very interesting how
really
they
really remarkable.
turned around and really just cleaned up their image, and now they just care about all those poor abused pit bulls.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
I mean, it's worth saying too. I think that when they were known as the Church of the Final Judgment, they had close ties to Satanism and some other groups too. That I'm not sure if we don't want to call lawyers upon us by mentioning their names, but
yeah, you gotta watch out because there was an author who wrote a book, kind of the book on the history of the Process Church, and all but the first printing. So if you want, and I'll look it up for the next time. Here's another teaser, cliffhanger. You guys got to tune in. I'll mention the author's
yeah.
name and title of the book, but essentially, if you want the actual book that he wrote, you have to find an original printing, because after that first edition, the Process Church actually sued him and made him remove all mention, like an entire chapter was removed from any later editions of this book that mentioned the Charles Manson connection. So yeah, so only the first printing, the first edition of the book has that chapter in it, which I think is kind of interesting. They have deep pockets, which is strange. You wouldn't think, or you might think to yourself, like, what, these kooks, can't be anything more than just, you know, weird kooks. Like, but no, they have some deep pockets. Um,
Hmm.
and here you can
Yeah.
see on the cover of this book the German Shepherd dogs, because that was a major, um, for some reason, that was a major thing with these people. They always had these dogs, and there was a lot of reports of children being abused and treated worse than the dogs. And of course, the dogs themselves were actually used in ritual sacrifices that these people did. So again, back to the Sons of Sam, one of the things that the detectives were finding when they were investigating the Sons of Sam murders was sacrificed German shepherds in New York City and other parts of the country that were connected. Like I said, we'll get into it more on another show, but they would find, dead, buried German shepherd dogs behind the apartment complex that David Berkowitz lived in. And David Berkowitz himself, when he was arrested, said that he was told to commit these murders and killings by his neighbor Sam's big black dog, which was actually a
Hmm.
6,000-year-old creature in the form of a dog. So it's all very strange. There's a lot of weird dog connections to the Sons of Sam killings and this cult and these, associated cults. So yeah, weird stuff. We'll get into it some other time more deeply,
And,
but there's a little teaser for you.
yeah, and so much for it dispels some of the dogisms. I'm trying to come up with a good word for like the nonsense that dog lovers spout. So they always say, well, dogs can tell if you're a good person, and all good people love dogs, right? Well, I see dogs not being loved, and I see dogs not detecting, bad people. So there's there's that going on.
Yeah, there's all kinds of just bizarre attributes that are, credited to dogs that are just anthropomorphizing them, which are demonstrably false. I mean, uh, I think there was a serial killer that loved dogs. I think there's more than one. we can look this up as
Yeah,
part of the series, but there's been a lot of murderers and terrible people
yeah.
who really love
I think
dogs.
Jeffrey Dahmer was one. Yeah,
Yes.
I can actually, off the top of my head, Jeffrey Dahmer was one, and they talk about how I think he had a dog, and it was the only thing he ever treated well, or something. He would abuse other things, but he loved this dog.
Yes, that's a common thread
Yeah.
actually,
So
kind
when
of
you
weirdly. I think John Wayne
yeah,
Gacy was one too.
Dahmer
He is a
he is another one.
horrible
Yes.
one. But I'm pretty
Bill Manson,
sure.
and of course I mentioned Adolf Hitler too. That one's like you read any biography, and he would fondly talk about how his dogs are better than people. Like when I hear people, because that's a thing you hear in growing sentiment. People keep saying this. Oh, dogs are better than people. I pretty much rage quit off Facebook at this point because every time I get on there, it's like all these people putting their dogs are better than people posts up, and I'm just fatigued by it, and I'm like, you're literally quoting Hitler. I'm sorry to tell you that. It's yeah,
Yeah, I mean here, John Wayne Gacy, who was convicted of killing 33 young men and boys, and
33.
there could have been more victims. There were only, I mean, there were 33 known that he was convicted for, but there could have been more because, like a lot of these people, he targeted homeless or prostitutes,
Right.
people who are already kind of on the fringes and who they thought might not be missed or noticed even. But yeah, here it says Gacy wept copiously upon the death of both dogs and yet showed no emotion for any of his victims. His final words weren't, "I'm sorry," but simply, "Kiss my ass." And how often do we see that type of mentality? Now, I'm not calling all dog owners serial killers, obviously, but I'm just saying the whole overarching, I guess, mentality of a lot of these people is to view dogs as greater. I mean, you go to people's houses with dogs and you'll see signs like, "You're just a guest, the dog lives here. If you
Right.
don't like it, this is the dog's chair. That's the
It's
dog's
a
spot."
very underlying antisocial mindset, and
Yes.
it probably does point to some sort of deeper issue. I'm not going to try to diagnose that, but yeah, that's been my thought for a long time. That whenever I hear that or see that, it's clearly that something's dare I say not right with that person.
Right.
It's always a big red flag.
Yes. All right. Well, we are 2 hours in, and I think we've
Wow.
left a really great cliffhanger for next time. So, yeah, any closing thoughts?
We need some sort of like anti-parasitic cream. Like some sort of cleanse, maybe an herbal cleanse that we can get rid of these creatures from society. I mean, closing thoughts. My closing thoughts might be like opening thoughts. I wish for humans to do better. I think there's a lot of just disgraceful behavior on display with this dog obsession that really needs to go, and people need to be put first. Whatever this phenomenon is with the dogs, I wish it would get some more attention and study instead of just being viewed as a vehicle for marketing, and have a big industry where people can make a profit. Maybe people should step back and say, hey, is this good for us? Is this good for humans? It's kind of like cigarettes. Think of like cigarettes in the past. I mean, there's still a big industry, but at first when it was all about the profit, well, consequences be damned. We'll market it to pregnant women. We'll tell them that cigarettes are great for expecting mothers. But now we know a little better, and use at your own risk. So I would like to see maybe a little more oversight and somebody to actually do some proper research and say, hey, these dogs might not be really good for us, and use at your own risk. I guess that's a closing thought.
Totally. Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I definitely agree. Animal on Control always ends his with people first, and I think that's kind of
Yeah.
where we're coming back around to is like ultimately, I don't think that what we are talking about here is motivated by hate or anything like, we're not just railing on dogs and dog culture and the dog pet industry and things like that because we're just hateful people. We actually, I think, have a lot of deep concern and care for people, and that's why we're talking about these things. So
Right.
yeah, I think that the important thing to keep in mind is this is all actually based out of a concern for humanity and seeing us do better than what we have and wanting better for the future generations. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it's not about hating dogs. It's about loving humanity and realizing that we've got a serious problem here that is it's treated too whimsically, like it's like, oh, this is all in good fun, but no, this is like a serious problem. Not like it is a serious problem. It's costing us too much.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
mm.
Awesome. All right. Well, tune in next time and we'll dive deep into the dark world of dogs even more.
Well, we're going right into it. Okay, let's do it.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks so much.